This episode contains graphic and disturbing content. Listener discretion is advised. If you find the material distressing, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional. Hello and welcome to this episode of Crime KE podcast. My good name is Ajuma and I am a human rights journalist from Kenya. Now, in this week's episode, we get into the murders of 31-year-old Joyce Syombua and her two children, 10-year-old Shanice Maua and 5-year-old Prince Michael. Now, this is a recently concluded case because the judgment was just delivered last month. And in the words of the presiding judge, this is a case of infanticide and femicide. Now, to begin this story, let me take you to Thursday, 24th October of 2019. Joyce Syombua, a mother of two, has been invited to the Laikipia airbase in Nanyuki by her estranged husband, Peter Mugure Maura. Peter Mugure was a major in the Kenya Air Force and was based in Nanyuki at the time. The two of them had had a tumultuous on and off relationship for more than 10 years at this point, which resulted in the births of their two children, Shanice and Prince. Now, when I say tumultuous, I really mean it because at some point, the two had separated and Peter got together with another woman and had two other children with her. Now, Peter at some point even started expressing doubts about the paternity of Shanice and Prince, which actually landed the two of them in court. Well, the doubt wasn't exactly what landed them in court, but the fact that Peter had used his doubt about the paternity to stop providing financial support for the kids. So in 2018, Joyce filed a case seeking child support for the children. And now, as part of that case, the judge ordered a paternity test which showed that both Shanice and Prince were in fact Peter's kids. Now, that judge also ordered that he should provide 25,000 Kenyan shillings every month to go towards the upkeep of his children. The court also ordered that Joyce would have primary custody of the children and Peter was given visitation rights to see Shanice and Prince Michael. So when Peter invited Joyce and the kids to the airbase on that Thursday in October of 2019, she knew that she was following the court's order to give Peter access to his kids. Also, Shanice's birthday, her 10th birthday on November 1st of 2019 was fast approaching, and Peter had told her that he wanted to celebrate it with the children. So on the morning of Friday, 25th October 2019, Joyce left her home in Nairobi and headed to Nanyuki with Shanice and Prince. Now, one thing that stood out was that two of the closest people to her, her mother and her best friend, had warned her several times, asking her not to go to Nanyuki. And according to court testimony from Joyce's mother, she believed that Peter had tried to poison the kids before the court ordered the DNA test. So she felt that they would not even be safe with him in Nanyuki. So both her and Joyce's best friend expressed their fears to Joyce. But at the end of the day, the decision was hers to make. It was not really hers to make because there was also a court order here, but she decided to go to Nanyuki with the kids. Now, Joyce, Shanice, and Prince arrived in Nanyuki on that Friday night. And according to evidence presented in court, Peter picked them up at the Nanyuki main stage at around 9 p.m. that Friday. He then took them to his house inside the Laikipia airbase. Now, at around 10:30 p.m., Joyce told her best friend through a text message that she had arrived safely in Nanyuki and the children were safe. They continued texting back and forth until around midnight. And in this conversation, the best friend would express her fear about Joyce's decision to take the trip to Nanyuki, but Joyce would constantly reassure her that both she and her children were safe. Still, her best friend advised her to, quote, sleep with one eye open. It was clear that she did not trust Peter's intention. And I want to mention that a big part of the reason why Joyce's case was reported very quickly and followed up also quickly was because she was in constant communication with her best friend. So when the texting stopped from her side, her best friend was very quick to act. Okay, so the night passed, and on Saturday morning, she told her best friend that they had slept well, and she was really okay by that morning. Now things started sounding alarming to the best friend at around 11:30 a.m. that Saturday when Joyce texted her and told her that she was in the shower and got out to find that she was all alone in the house. Peter had left with their two children. Now, according to court testimony from the best friend, when Joyce asked Peter where he had gone with the kids, he explained that he had taken them on a tour around the airbase. But the thing is, Peter would later return to the house at 6 p.m. without the children. Now, I want you to understand that at this point, Joyce is consistently communicating everything to her best friend back in Nairobi. She testified that when Joyce asked him where the children were, he told her not to worry about them because they were safe and he had left them back because he wanted them to resolve their issues in private. And that was the last time she spoke to Joyce. At around 6:35 p.m., she sent a message asking Joyce if the children were back, but she never received a response. She tried to call her after that, but again, no response. Her phone had been switched off. Now, this was alarming and unlike Joyce, so immediately the friends started finding other ways to reach her. By 8 p.m. that Saturday, after 2 hours with zero communication from Joyce, she called Peter to ask about her since he was the last known person to be with her. Now, Joyce's friend testified that Peter told her that Joyce had already left Nanyuki and was headed for Nairobi. Again, this was very unlike Joyce to travel without telling her and to just disappear without a word and switch off her phone. So when it got to Sunday, 27th of October, without any communication from Joyce, her friend decided to report her missing at the Soweto police station in Kayole in Nairobi. She explained to the police that Joyce had gone silent after visiting her estranged husband in Nanyuki, and she was worried because this was out of character for her. So on Monday, an OCS at the Soweto police station reached out to Peter since he was the last known person to be with Joyce. Now, Peter told the officer that he had no idea that Joyce had not arrived in Nairobi because the last time he saw her, that is on Saturday at 6 p.m., he had taken her and the two children to the Nanyuki main stage to get a vehicle to get them back to Nairobi. Now, once Peter got this call, he also went to the Nanyuki police station and filed a missing persons report for Joyce and the kids. So now there are two different police reports of Joyce and her kids going missing in two different police stations in two different counties. Now, Joyce's best friend testified that on the same day, Monday, 27th, she received a call from Joyce's phone, and the person on the other side of the call identified himself as a driver for a 4NTE Matatu Sacco. Now, the driver told her that he had found her phone in one of the vehicles and decided to call her because she was the last person to have communicated with the phone's owner. Now, the best friend passed this information to the Soweto police station, and an officer traveled from Kayole to the Sacco offices in Nanyuki to investigate this. Now, after interrogating the driver, police theorized that Joyce's disappearance was the result of foul play, mainly because this driver's story did not match with Peter's story. In fact, it made them more suspicious of Peter. Now, according to court documents, the driver told police that on Saturday, the 26th, the day that Joyce would have supposedly left her phone in the vehicle, he had driven to an event in Bomet County, with the vehicle, that is, and he returned to Nanyuki with the vehicle late that night at around 11 p.m. and he retired for the night before resuming work on Sunday morning. Now that morning, he said that he drove to Nyahururu and back before finding the phone inside the vehicle. So if Joyce left her phone inside the vehicle, she would have had left it after he came back from Nyahururu, which was way after she disappeared, more than 24 hours after she disappeared. So the police started looking closely at Peter. Several interviews with Joyce's family and friends gave the investigators a picture of the nature of the relationship between Joyce and Peter. They found that the two had had a very tumultuous relationship. They learnt of the child support case and the fact that neither her mother nor her friend trusted Peter around Joyce. So they brought him in for interrogation and took his phone for forensic analysis. Now, during interrogation, Peter told the police that Saturday morning when the kids disappeared, he had called a friend who he refused to name, and he asked this friend to take the kids so that he and Joyce would have some time to resolve their issues in private. He then said that he left the kids with a friend for most of the day, and during that time, he spent time with Joyce and even had lunch at Kirimara Springs Hotel in Nanyuki town. Surveillance footage and testimony from the hotel manager confirmed that the two had been seen at the hotel that afternoon without the children. Now, according to Peter, after they left Kirimara Springs Hotel that Saturday, at around 6 p.m., he received an emergency call from work, and Joyce and the kids could not spend another night. He realized that after the call. And he said that that was when he met up with the unnamed friend again, who had been quote unquote babysitting the kids all day, and he took the kids. Then he says that after that, he took Joyce, Shanice, and Prince to the Nanyuki main stage so that they could catch a bus back to Nairobi. Peter said that that was the last time he saw his family, and it was on that Saturday night at around 7 p.m. when he left them at the Nanyuki main stage. The police found that there were a lot of inconsistencies in his story, from the unnamed friend to the interviews that revealed that he may have had a motive to want Joyce gone. Investigators uncovered several pieces of evidence by following Joyce and Peter's movements that weekend. Number one, they went to the Laikipia airbase and checked the logs at the gate. They found that Joyce had signed in and out of the place, so they could confirm that she was at the airbase and she left and she signed at the gate. Now, they found that she arrived at the base on Friday night and signed out on Saturday evening. But one thing that was alarming to them was that the handwriting that signed in was not the same one that signed out. So at this point, police know without a doubt there is something fishy going on. Number two, and probably the most damning piece of evidence, came from a cab driver. This was more than 2 weeks after Joyce, Shanice, and Prince went missing. Now, on the 15th of November of 2019, a cab driver went to the DCI office in Nanyuki and he confessed to the police that on the Saturday that Joyce went missing, Peter had made a very weird request to him. He said that Peter had asked him to help him get 3 gunny bags because he had quote-unquote luggage to dispose. He also offered him money if he could find him a place to dispose of dead bodies. The cab driver said that he was caught off guard by the request and he declined, but he felt that he had to come forward when he saw the news and the suspicion that was being shown towards Peter. Now, on the same day, Peter was arrested and named the main suspect in the disappearances of Joyce, Shanice, and Prince. Now, the third piece of evidence that broke the case wide open came from the forensic analysis of Peter's phone. The analysis revealed that Peter had been in communication with 21-year-old Colin Spamba on the day that Joyce disappeared and even the days that followed. Now, Collins at the time worked as a casual laborer at the airbase, and he had ambitions of joining the Kenya Air Force. The messages that were found between the two indicated that the two had been planning to hide something. So Collins was arrested on the 16th of November, just a day after Peter was arrested. Now, Collins did not even pretend to not know what was happening here. He confessed to an elaborate plan to conceal the murders of Joyce, Shanice, and Prince. According to Collins' story, he got a call from Peter on Saturday 26th while in a Nanyuki-bound bus from Nairobi. He said that Peter informed him that he had a job for him at the airbase and he asked him to meet him there immediately he got back to Nanyuki. Now, he arrived in Nanyuki at around 5 p.m. on Saturday, and Peter told him to meet him at Kirimara Springs Hotel. While there, Peter explained to him that he had a job for him, and if he helps him with this job, he would use his rank as a major in the army to get him a job in the Air Force. At this point, he still didn't know what the job was, but he wanted to join the army, and this seemed like a good deal to him. Now, after the meetup, he went back to his house in a place called Thingitu Estate, not far away from Laikipia Air Base. He said that he waited until around 10 p.m. that night when Peter called him and told him that he needed him for the job at that time. Now, he met Peter at the parking lot of the airbase, and Peter led him to his house. Now, when they got there, he said that Peter led him into the house that was next to his house. Now, inside the house, he told him to go into the bathroom, and inside, he was met with a very gruesome scene. He described seeing the body of a young girl tied with a rope inside a gunny bag lying on the bathroom floor. He said that there was another body belonging to a small boy in the bathtub. He was also tied with a rope and placed in a gunny bag. Now, this is the point when he said that Peter actually explained to him what the quote-unquote job that he was hiring him to do was. Peter said that he needed him to help him dispose of the bodies and keep the whole mission a secret. Then, he would help him get a spot in the Kenya Air Force. At this time, Collins said that he had no choice but to do what he was being asked to do. He said that the two of them carried the kids' bodies into the back of Peter's car, and after they were done, he opened the door to his actual house, and inside, behind the chairs, was Joyce's lifeless body. He said that both of them put the body in a gunny bag and took it to the car where the two children's bodies were. The two of them then drove out of the airbase to the Makaburini area of Nanyuki in Thingitu near Collins's place. They then proceeded to a shallow grave in the area where they buried the three bodies, and Peter reminded him to keep this whole thing a secret. Now, according to Collins, Peter told him that the reason why he committed the murders was that he had just found out that Joyce was being unfaithful and she was also trying to exploit him. The next day, on Sunday, he said that he went back to the airbase because Peter had asked him to go and clean his house and car. Now, after he finished cleaning, he said that Peter paid him 4,000 Kenyan shillings and told him to bring him his academic certificates so that he could get started in the process of enrolling him into the Air Force. So on Monday, he brought him his certificates, and he said that Peter asked him to check on the grave where they buried his family to make sure that no one finds out about it. He said that he even sent him money to buy a spade so that he could use it to take care of the grave from time to time. And Collins really tried to keep the whole thing a secret until police caught up with him. Now, after his arrest and confession, he led the police to the shallow grave at Makaburini, where police recovered the bodies of Joyce Shanice, and Prince. At this point, they had been dead and missing for 21 days. A postmortem exam was conducted on the three deceased on Wednesday, November 20th of 2019 by the chief government pathologist, Dr. Johansen Odwar. The pathologist found that Shanice and Prince died from asphyxiation and Joyce died from blunt force trauma to the head. Now, according to the report, which was presented in court, Joyce suffered head and brain injuries from a blunt object, and Shanice and Prince died after they were strangled using a rope. Collins entered into a plea agreement with the prosecution in which he agreed to plead guilty to his part in the crime and to testify against Peter. In exchange, he was sentenced to only 5 years in prison on May 13th of 2021. The prosecution lined up more than 20 witnesses to testify in the case against Peter, including Collins, Joyce's best friend, the taxi driver, and even the hotel manager at Kirimara Springs Hotel. Now, according to the prosecution's theory, on that Saturday morning, when Joyce went into the shower, Peter strangled the two children and hid their bodies in the house next door. After that, he lied to Joyce about the whereabouts of the kids and even went to lunch with her at Kirimara Springs Hotel, after which they returned to his apartment and he beat her to death. He then started finding ways to cover up what he had done, and that is where Collins came in. Now, the prosecution also believed that he either sneaked the phone into the vehicle in which it was found, that is Joyce's phone, or he paid somebody to do it. Now, evidence presented in court showed that Peter had premeditated the murder, especially because it showed that 3 days before the murder, on the 23rd of October, he went and scouted the burial site in Thingithu. He apparently even went to a sewerage company in the area and asked the guard if he could be allowed to dump some waste there. Now, the guard who testified in court said that Peter was not allowed to dump any waste in the sewage that they had because he refused to reveal what kind of waste he wanted to dispose of. Now, despite all the evidence presented against him, Peter's family actually stood by him. And in one interview with Citizen TV, his sisters say that they knew Peter as a gentle person and they describe him specifically as someone who would not even hurt a fly. Now, even after Collins's confession, Peter apparently sent his sisters to ask Collins to withdraw the confession, because this was actually the biggest piece of evidence that the investigators had against him. Now, after more than 5 years of investigations and a trial, the High Court in Nairobi found Peter Mugure guilty of the triple murders of Joyce, Shanice, and Prince Michael. The judge said that it was clear that the prosecution had proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and all the evidence, DNA analysis, phone records, witness accounts, and even the autopsy pointed to Peter as the perpetrator. The prosecution asked the judge to impose the death penalty for the murders, specifically citing the brutality used in murdering the three. But on Tuesday, July 14th of 2026, Justice Martin Moya of the Milimani High Court in Nairobi sentenced Peter to 3 concurrent life sentences for the triple murders. Now, during sentencing, the judge said that the murders were barbaric and the evidence showed a lot of calculation from Peter. The judge said that Peter went into very considerable lengths to make sure that Joyce and the kids traveled to Nanyuki that weekend, and he made the same effort to cover up what he had done after murdering them. He also said that he noticed that Peter lacked remorse for the whole situation. Now, after the sentencing, Joyce's mother told the media that she was glad that her child and grandchildren had gotten justice at last. She also said that she had forgiven Peter for the murders, but this was an experience that had affected her so much, and she would never be able to forget. Now, Joyce, Shanice, and Prince were buried at their home in Kitui on December 7th, of 2019. May their souls rest in peace. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this episode. You can support this podcast by subscribing wherever you listen, sharing this episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at crime.ke, crime with a K. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and to return next week for another episode of Crime KE podcast. But until then, stay safe and remember, it is crime with a K.